This boondoggle, led by the incompetent governor of California, Gavin Newsom.
Seconds can matter. And it can be the difference between getting you and your family to safety or not.
Hey everyone, I'm Haley. I study strategic communications. Let's sharpen our media literacy skills together. This is how to push back. There are three classic appeals in rhetoric, three ways to persuade someone. Logos is the appeal to logic. Ethos is the appeal to credibility, like character, reputation, and experience. And pathos is the appeal to emotion. What stood out to me in today's clips from both news and editorial segments across MSNBC and Fox was how little we heard from logos. Across nearly 10 minutes of coverage, we saw a lot of emotional framing, some credibility-based appeals, but almost no clear reasoned arguments.
Saying, quote, this boondoggle, led by the incompetent governor of California, Gavin Newsom, his words, not mine, has cost taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars, and we have received nothing in return except cost overruns. The railroad we were promised still does not exist and never will. This project was severely overpriced, overregulated, and never delivered.
This clip is all about pathos, the emotional appeal. They're using mockery and moral disgust, terms like new scum and boondoggle and never delivered. They're using emotional persuasion through an insult, essentially. There's no evidence offered, no logic explained, just certainty and scorn. It's not clearly labeled as opinion. This brings to mind the fairness doctrine, which was abolished by the FCC under the Reagan administration. But basically, it required news to present both sides of the issue and to label whether news was news or if it was editorial content, so opinion. This clip doesn't do either. And it's kind of to me, it's a performance of outrage, and it's delivered as if it were news.
Keeps its way into all of their talking points when it talks about their rights, when it talks about due process. You always need to parse the language because citizens and illegals have different rights and different privileges and different obligations of the government to deal with them. Before we let you go, is it going to take, sadly, I hate to go to negative town here, but the killing of an ICE officer for these Democrat politicians to change their tune? Or, Katie, would they even change their tune following a tragedy like that?
After what we've seen from the violent rhetoric of the Democrat Party, I don't know if they've changed their tune, and I hope it doesn't get that far. Tom Homan came out and said they have the ability to defend themselves. Our U.S. attorney has empowered them in California to be able to defend themselves. So we hope it doesn't get that far, but the Democrats should come out and say, support ICE, and these violent uprisings will go away.
Here, again, we get pathos, but this time it's through fear. ICE agents are under attack. Democrats are to blame for putting them at risk. There's no attempt at appealing to logic here, no explanation of policy, no data, just this rising sense of danger and a clear political enemy, in this case, the left. There's also a thread of ethos. Law enforcement is positioned as heroic and under siege, which frames support for ICE as morally correct. It's emotionally effective, but it flattens a complex issue into a story about good guys and bad guys.
Your local news station doesn't cover every corner of the state.
Yeah.
The cell phone reception can be spotty at best when you're in rural Kentucky. And these radio stations are the lifeline. It's the way we get alerts. It's the way we get warnings to people. And when you're talking about a tornado coming down in western Kentucky or eastern Kentucky getting flooded in between the mountains, seconds matter. This isn't just minutes, seconds can matter. And it can be the difference between getting you and your family to safety or not, with devastating consequences.
And so
MSNBC leans into the emotional appeal as well, pathos. The speaker builds urgency by painting a vivid picture of rural life, bad cell signals, bad weather, seconds that matter. It's a heartfelt moment and in a very soft tone. It's especially poignant to anyone who lives in a place like that or who worries about public service cuts. But while the emotion is very real, the logos or the logic is missing here as well. We don't get a breakdown of the budget or what the cuts actually do. It's persuasive because it feels true. That's the power of pathos, but without logos, it's hard to think clearly about the trade-offs.
So McConnell and I have not agreed on a lot over the years. He's an appropriator.
Yeah.
And I think he does see that this money was appropriated. That's the fancy way of saying we've already given money or promised money to people. Now they're clawing it back at a time when states were relying on this, when radio stations were relying on this, when there's no way to go in and immediately make up that funding. And without the details there, it's going to hurt people. And I hope that's what he saw in this.
This clip leans on ethos, credibility. It uses government language like appropriated funds and appeals to norms about process. By citing Mitch McConnell, it signifies bipartisan weight. Even he thinks this might be a problem. That's how ethos works. It builds trust. But again, we don't get much logos. We don't get much logic. What's actually being clawed back? What does it matter? Without that information, we're not reasoning. We're relying on tone and trust. It feels informed, but we're still being guided by impressions more than analysis. What stood out to me across all 4 clips wasn't just the emotion, it was how little actual reasoning we were offered. We saw plenty of pathos, fear, mockery, urgency, compassion. We saw some ethos, credibility through process or identity. But as for an appeal to logic or clear argument, it was almost entirely missing. When a piece of media pulls on me emotionally, I like to stop and ask, is this helping me understand, or is this just trying to get me to choose a side?